See everybody again. We've been gone for quite some time. We had a wonderful trip. Matt and Kara and Eli, and probably as most of you know now, baby G is coming along here in January. And it's supposed to be a boy, they say, but we'll see. Anyway, we had a great visit. One of the things that we did, and I'll share this with you a little bit, and I highly recommend if you ever get the opportunity to go do this. We drove about 7 hours out of our way extra to Williamstown, Kentucky, and we saw the Ark. Oh, wow. It is big. I'll tell you, it was amazing to walk through that, to read all the information about it. We got there in time. A man by the name of Tim Chaffee was giving a presentation about old Earth, young Earth, and using the Bible and science says that there's no way that anybody should not understand that the world is only 6,000 years, give or take. 6 to 7, depending on, I guess, who you talk to in some of the brotherhood. And what impressed me the most in this auditorium that held 2,500 people, now there wasn't that many for the afternoon session, but he ended his presentation with a prayer. And I thought, well, you just don't see that anyplace. So I'm anxious to go back again. I bought a chart, kind of outlines the history of mankind. Some of you got to see it last Sunday. And I talked to Wayne and Jack, and we may put it up in the fellowship hall for you guys to take a look at when you want to. It's really a good educational piece of material. But I appreciate those who filled in for me while I was gone. Wayne told me that he finished up chapter 10. And so we're going to begin with chapter 11. Chapter 11 of Proverbs. Chapter 11, if you had to summarize it, I guess, in one sentence, you could say that it deals with the practical benefits for living righteously. Would someone please read for me verses 1 through 4? Thank you. What is Solomon talking about here in the very first verse, where it says, "A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is His delight"? Honesty is the best policy. Remember that the law prohibited the use of false weights and measures. Okay? Let's turn, if you will, over to Leviticus 19. And while we're doing that, if somebody wants to turn to Deuteronomy 25, 13 through 15, I'd appreciate it. Leviticus 19. And we'll begin with verse 35 and read 35 and 36. It reads, "You shall do no injustice in judgment, in measurement of length, weight, or volume. You shall have just balances, just weights, a just ephah, and a just hin. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt." Now I had to look it up because I didn't know, but an ephah, and I may be pronouncing that wrong, is approximately 1 bushel, okay? And a hin here was approximately 1 gallon. So they expected you to be accurate in your measurements. If somebody had Deuteronomy 25, 13 through 15, if you could read that for me. Thank you.
"You shall not have in your bag of differing weights, a large and a small. You shall not have in your house offering differing measures, a large and a small. You shall have full and just weights. You shall have full and just measures, that your days may be prolonged in the land which the Lord your God has given you."
Thank you, thank you. Solomon here is saying that a false balance stands for any kind of transaction where deceit is found. Do we find that happening today? I think so at times. You know, I have to be honest and admit to you, every time I go into a gas station on the pump, it talks about where it says this has been certified that, you know, it's accurate, the gallons it says you're pumping. I always wonder if that's really true. I mean, you know, because it never seems to fill up the tank enough. They do measure. Yeah, they do. Yeah. James? Yeah. Yeah. I know. You work so hard collecting all those things over the weeks and months, and then that's all I get for my work, you know. But no, it does happen. Now, a just weight was literally a full or complete stone. Okay, that's what they used. And it was easy to grind away or chip away at that stone to make it lighter. And of course, if it was lighter, then the customer would be given a short amount and not the right amount. Now, this is one of many, many warnings in the Bible against dishonesty. I mean, honesty and integrity are fundamental rights to righteousness. How important is your integrity or somebody's integrity? Isn't it absolutely essential? Paramount. If you lose that integrity by lying, not telling the truth, can you get it back? Tom? They paid the price like that, didn't they? Yeah. How about today? You tell a false story to a friend, he finds out, and, you know, you think he'll trust you again? Take a long time. You know, my initial response to that question, the answer I would say is no. Because once you lie to somebody, in the back of their mind, they're always going to wonder if you're telling the truth. But what does the Bible say we're supposed to do? If that person comes to us and asks us to forgive them for what they did, we're supposed to do what? Forgive. And not only forgive, but what else? Forget. Now that's hard to do. I got to be honest with you. It's hard to forget when somebody does you wrong, doesn't it? That's what we're supposed to do. Any other thoughts on that? Okay. Verse 2 says, when pride comes, then comes shame, but with humble is wisdom. Remember that pride and arrogance here is contrasted with humility and modesty. What happens to people who are arrogant? Well, are they liked? No, not particularly. We've all met them, haven't we? They don't really want to, you know, you just put up with them. Okay, you hope that they will someday change. Arrogance makes a person be disliked by others and sets himself up or herself up for the fall. Proverbs 16 and 18, it's over a couple of chapters, says, pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. The great sin of all mankind is pride. And Paul tells us that that was the sin that ruined Satan. If you turn over with me to 1 Timothy 3 and 6. First Timothy 3 and 6 says, not a novice or a new convert, we're talking about qualifications of bishops here, lest being puffed up with the pride he fall into the same condemnation as the devil. That's what got the devil. Pride. And probably a lot of other things too. Remember the words of Jesus in Luke 14 and 11. Whoever exalts himself will be abased, which means humbled. And who humbles himself will be exalted. That's that. Absolutely right. Humility and honesty are traits which portray the wisdom of God. We find that in Proverbs 15 and 33. Any thoughts on verse 2? Okay. 3 and 4 kind of, I'll read them together again. The integrity of the upright will guide them, but the perversity of the unfaithful will destroy them. Riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. In verse 3 and 4 here, it says, Solomon's basically saying, if you are good, you are guided by honesty. People who can't be trusted are destroyed by their own dishonesty. I mean, they just keep spiraling down to the bottom of the pit. At some point, they're going to hit rock bottom, and hopefully that's when they turn themselves around. Verse 4 states and says, riches do not profit in the day of wrath. What is the day of wrath? The judgment day. Revelation 6 and 17, the day of the wrath of God, which is the judgment day. It's warm in here. Remember, the reason integrity of the upright works best is because money, if you will have no value in the day of judgment. Turn with me and read Luke 12, starting in verse 16. Luke 12, beginning in verse 16. Then he spoke a parable to them, saying, this is Jesus talking here, the ground of a certain rich man yielded plentiful. And he thought within himself, saying, what shall I do, since I have no room to store my crops? So he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there I will store all my crops and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this night your soul will be required of you. Then whose will those things be which you have provided? Verse 21 says, so is he who lays up treasure for himself is not rich towards God. What's he saying here? Can we plan for tomorrow? Sure. Are we guaranteed tomorrow? No.
There's nothing wrong with what he did. It was more, he didn't give credit to God. He didn't disperse like he should have and given, but it was, look what I did.
Mm-hmm.
God had no part in it. I did this.
He
Didn't give the credit for the credit.
was very stingy with what he had. Okay? You know, there's nothing wrong with planning. You know, for tomorrow, next week, a month from now. I mean, that's just good common sense. Okay? We plan our homes, our houses, our households and stuff around a budget, let's say. And we try to stick to that budget. Okay? Things come up all the time, obviously, but you know, you deal with it. There's nothing wrong in planning for it, but if you think you're guaranteed it, then that's when trouble sets in. Jack?
Where your whole mindset follows is where you're headed as a person, no regard for anything else, but just
That's right. Gail.
I really believe that every Christian year, many of us, most of us are, we have prospered because we have been trying to live a righteous life, a fair life, an honest life, and we have to give one person the credit for all of that.
That's right.
It's been a lot easier for most of us.
Yeah,
Far too much.
absolutely. Yeah. Yes, Norma. That's right. Yeah, and that's, I think, is the main point of that they left God out. I mean, there's that saying, it is more blessed to give than to receive. I almost got it mixed up. When I was a kid, I thought that now, but you know. How true is that? I think it's, yes, Mary. Yeah. Yeah. They don't stop and give the credit. Yeah. Yeah. We're nothing without God. People do not give God the credit that he should get. I mean, and it is true, that saying. It is more blessed to give than receive. It makes you feel better. Makes you just tingle all over. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Giving God the credit for all the achievements that they, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people worked on that. But, Tom?
What's scary now is they're trying to leave God out of it.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's so scary. I mean, that's how much we need to live a good Christian life. There's no telling when God is going to be fed up. And we just got to be prepared.
Yeah. Some people heard me say this. If something doesn't happen pretty soon, I think God's going to have to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, it's getting bad. I mean, it's getting bad. Any other thoughts on that? Okay. Someone please read verses 5 through 8. Thank you. Solomon says here, righteousness traces out blameless paths or makes his way smooth or straight, but the wicked will fall because of their deeds. Now, the New Testament really echoes this truth in the words we find in Galatians 6 and 7, where it says, whatsoever a man soweth, what happens? That shall he reap. Okay? Very true. We're going to be held accountable for the things that we've done on this earth. Verse 6 is just an emphatic reiteration of verse 5, basically saying it again. The righteousness of the upright will deliver them, but the unfaithful will be taken by their own lust. We get into verse 7. What does this verse mean to you? When a wicked man dies, his expectation will perish. He's not going to heaven. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, excellent. I got down here essentially the same thing. My question was, why does the expectation and hope of a wicked man perish when he dies? And the answer I wrote here is his hopes and dreams did not reach beyond this world. Okay? It was only of this world, not of eternity. Yeah. Yeah. You can't do that. Yeah. That's exactly right. Any other comments on that particular verse 7? Verse 8. The righteous is delivered from trouble, and it comes to the wicked instead. The righteous person receives what he hoped for because he goes and looks beyond this world. Okay? Let me say it again. The righteous person receives what he hoped for because he looks, his goals, and what he looks for is beyond this world. Turn with me to Colossians 3, please. Colossians 3, beginning right in verse 1 and 2. If then you were raised with Christ, Seek those things which are above, where Christ is, sitting at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above and not on things of this earth, on this earth. How true a statement is that? Absolutely. Very true. When we focus all of our goals and wants and desires of this world, that's when we get into trouble. Okay? That's not what God wants us to do. Yeah. You can't take it with you. That's absolutely true. The righteous person's troubles will be laid upon those who are led by pride and selfish desires, what this verse 8 is saying also. Examples of this happened when Haman was hanged on the gallows, which he had erected for Mordecai. We find that in Esther 7:10. And Daniel's accusers perished in the lion's den, for which Daniel was saved in Daniel 6:24. Okay? Those who tried to do us harm, they will get their just rewards. You know, is that wrong? Is that wrong to... We don't want anybody to perish. I mean, that's what God tells us we need to do. But let's face it, there's people out there who are evil. And a lot of times I'll just say, hey, God's going to judge you in the end. You're going to get what is coming to you. And even Paul tells us this in a way over in 2 Timothy. I think it's the last chapter of 2 Timothy, when Paul is dying. Chapter 4, and down in verse 14. Paul's situation in prison here, he says, Alexander the coppersmith did me much harm. May the Lord repay him according to his works. We don't have to wish evil or hurt on anybody, because God's going to be judging them in the end. They will get what they deserve.
There's ample warnings out there on how to live.
Yeah.
There's just not a few verses. There's a whole book. What is there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good point. James. That's right. Yeah. And God will keep his promise. Good point. Any thoughts? Yeah. Yeah. It'll be too late then. Okay, if someone would please read, bless you, verses 9 through 13. I'll go ahead. The hypocrite with his mouth destroys his neighbor, but through knowledge the righteous will be delivered. When it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices. And when the wicked perish, there is shouting. By the blessing of the upright, the city is exalted, but it is overthrown by the mouth of the wicked. He who is devoid of wisdom despises his neighbor, but a man of understanding holds his peace. A talebearer reveals secrets, but he who is of a faithful spirit conceals a matter. Going back to verse 9, the hypocrite. What's a hypocrite? Two-faced? What else can we say about the hypocrite? That's right. He preaches one thing and does exactly the opposite. He's the kind of person that will say, do as I say, not as I do. And that's who you have to be careful and avoid. Hypocrite with his mouth destroys his neighbor. To repeat lies, falsehoods, gossip, and slander is certainly something that God hates. Go back with me a couple of chapters to chapter 6 of Proverbs. And we talked about, in verse 16, the 6 things that God hates. And look at verse 17. A proud look, a lying tongue. It goes on, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans. These are things that God hates. And a hypocrite will have to answer for those things that they do. How a person uses his or her tongue about another can bear influence for good or for evil, can it? How we say and talk about somebody. Yes, Chuck. Okay, yeah. Exactly. You know, we've all met hypocrites. I'm sorry to say we have. They will tell you one thing but do exactly the opposite. It's really kind of sad. But that's another good way to describe what a hypocrite is. Verse 10. When it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices. And when the wicked perish, there is shouting. Now there is a direct connection here between the morality of the population and the happiness and the prosperity, if you will, of the unit. Okay, and when I talk about the unit, whether that unit is an individual city or a community or an entire society or even a nation. Nations where the will of God is ignored will find an increasing decline in their happiness, their prosperity, and their standard of living. We see that today, don't we? I'll use, for example, Venezuela. Look where they're at. A socialist country. They're all starving, hungry, nothing. No work, no money, no food. It's when they ignore God, things like this will happen. We have to be very careful. Thoughts or comments on that? Well, when the wicked is destroyed and perished, there is shouting among the joyful, yeah. Because there's a relief. You hope that happens, a relief that takes place. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we see this very concept, like I said, today in our world. A city is exalted and rejoices when it has righteous leadership. Over just a couple of chapters more, 14 and 34 of Proverbs. Solomon writes, and it says it explicitly, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Any other additional comments on that? Righteousness will exalt a nation, rise it up. Verse 11, again, kind of reiterates emphatically what verse 10 said. A town prospers when it has the blessings of the upright men, but the words of an evil man can destroy it. And we see that. We see that today. Thoughts? Going on to verse 12. He who is devoid of wisdom despises his neighbor, but a man of understanding holds his peace. Now, another word I have here where it says he who is devoid of wisdom is he who lacks heart. Does anybody else have anything different than those two? Lacks sense. That's another good way to put it. Solomon's saying here, he who belittles his neighbor lacks sense, what Jim just said, but a man of understanding remains silent. What's that saying about? I can't remember exactly how it goes. Don't open your mouth. Well, that's true too. I'm talking about open your mouth, remain quiet, and some people can think of you a fool. Open your mouth and remove all doubt. It's something like that. There you go. There you go. And how true that is. How true that is. Verse 13. A talebearer reveals secrets, but he who is a faithful spirit conceals the matter. Of all the damaging habits of evil people, that of gossip and the talebearer must rank very high. That is very hurtful. Oh yeah, we need to remember that one who comes to us with tales of others will also reveal our secrets. You ever thought about that? You know? I always like the person who comes up to you and say, hey, I was told not to tell anybody, but I want to tell you this. You know, did you know? And you're going, no, I don't want to know. I don't want to hear it. Yeah, remember that if that person does that, if you confide in them, chances are everybody's going to know. Everybody's going to know.
You know, many years ago, John, I had an older person come up to the church and told me of something about a person I barely know, but it's been on my mind all these years.
Yeah.
I can't get rid of it.
Oh, yeah, I know.
It's there.
Yeah. And it sometimes the best thing is just to keep our mouth shut, you know. My mom used to say, if you ain't got nothing to say good, just keep your mouth shut. And that's not bad advice. So, any other thoughts on that? Yeah. We're a little slow sometimes. Yeah. Connie? Exactly. Yeah. I mean, first of all, what good is it going to do? It's probably not going. It's going to cause harm. We need to remember that. Good point, James. Yeah. Yeah. But we need to stay away from people who gossip. I mean, and we need to make sure that we don't gossip ourselves, because we're not doing anybody any favors. And that's hard. Sometimes that's hard. Let's be honest. Any other thoughts? Okay. Someone please read verses 14 and 15. Just two of them there, please.
Where there is no guidance, a people fall. But in abundance of counselors, there is favor. Whoever puts up security for a stranger will surely suffer harm. But he who hates stretching hands in pledge is secure.
Thank you. Concerning verse 14, would you agree that it is better when a group of people are governed by laws and regulations or statutes, or we'll call them even conclusions, resulting from the deliberation of many competent and authorized men? I think so. Well, and you need input. And you just don't want to take one person's opinion. You need to hear from that person, that person, that person. And if you have the ultimate responsibility to make the ultimate decision, you want to be as well informed as you can be. Okay? I think, there's a lot of people who might not know all the ins and outs of a particular subject. But if they're smart, they're going to surround themselves with people who are, quote, experts. And they're going to listen to what they have to say, and then they, again, as I said, finally have the ultimate decision to make. When I was flying as a helicopter aircraft commander, I would take input from my crew chief, my first mech, my co-pilot. You're getting pretty close here to the trees, and I'd have to evaluate all that. How big the landing zone was, lots of different things. And I would then make the final decision, and hopefully it was a good one. Knock it. Most of the time it was. Jim. Yeah. 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 If you have a group of people, you might have one blind guide. They'll sneak in there. But if you got a lot of other people, you can weed that person out. That's why you don't want to just take the advice and instruction of just one person. Surround yourself, okay, with competent people. Is what he's saying here. Now, about this surety, we've talked about that before about guaranteeing, somebody's debt. We have to be careful, don't we? I'll come back to that in a minute. I want to bring out one other point for that last verse. There's a saying, it's another Proverbs, it's not found in the Bible, which says, now compare this with what I just mentioned about having lots of people to help you make decisions. There's a proverb that says, too many cooks spoil the broth. Now, what does that mean? That you can become overwhelmed with people telling you what to do. You got to do this, you got to do that. Too many chiefs and not enough Indians. So, I mean, this comes within reason about getting advice.
Well, the Bible has set it up New Testament. We have elders and deacons to guide people. I mean, it's a godly thing.
That's right. Our elders and deacons, their elders shepherd the flock. Okay? They're there to help us when we have concerns, questions, don't understand something. That's who we go to, and other people that we believe and trust in. Okay, verse 15. He who is a surety for a stranger will suffer for it, but one who hates being a surety is secure. Here again, another warning. We talked about this back in chapter 6. It's not a good idea, but if you ever do decide that you're going to guarantee a debt for somebody, there's about 3 things you need to make sure of. 1, be willing to pay it off if necessary. Okay? 2nd is just as important, if not more, don't get angry if payment is forced upon you. Okay? And the 3rd thing you need to consider is be sure that paying the note won't penalize your family. Those things you need to think about. I mean, probably all of us here at one time or another have helped somebody out to some degree, but you got to be careful. That's all we're saying here. Any other thoughts or questions on that? Okay? We'll get probably about a few more minutes to verses 16 through 19. I'll go ahead and read it. A gracious woman retains honor, but ruthless men retain riches. The merciful man does good for his own soul, but he who is cruel troubles his own flesh. The wicked man does deceptive work, but to him who sows righteousness will be a sure reward. As righteousness leads to life, so he who pursues evil pursues it to his own death. In verse 16 here, the contrast here is intended to compare a kind-hearted or gracious woman with a ruthless man. Okay? Her kindness receives honor and respect, whereby cruelty and the ruthlessness man may achieve a position of wealth, but he is left with no friends. Okay? What does a man get, James? Yeah, that's what I have here. The contrast here is intended to compare a kind-hearted, gracious woman with what it says in the second part of that. But a ruthless man retain riches. We're contrasting the two here. Is that not? Well, it's the wording of the ruthless, and you say strong. Anybody else have a different? Violent? Violent? Yeah, and I be honest with you, I remember seeing that wording about that, and depending upon how you use that word, I guess it can be not a good thing. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Yeah. That's really all it is. The word strong. Yeah. In the New King James it says unjust, and I don't know what the NIV, you have the ESV, don't you? Yeah. Any other thoughts on 16? Verse 17 through 19 tells us that mercy and cruelty will each reap what they sow. Let's read it again. The merciful man does good for his own soul, but he who is cruel troubles his own flesh. He's going to get what he sows. Again, 18, the wicked man does deceptive work, but to him who sows righteousness will be a sure reward. Sure reward. Pursuing righteousness results in life both now and eternally. Both life now and eternally, whereas pursuing evil results in death both now and eternally. Other thoughts or comments? Okay, I think that's going to be a good place to stop. A couple minutes before the kids come in, but any other thoughts or comments on chapter 11? Thank you very much. My understanding is I'm going to be up at Lake Tahoe this next week. Jack is going to have the lesson. Is it going to be your own lesson? Or okay, it won't be on Proverbs. No, you can help me. The Wednesday after that is the 31st. Okay, that's going to be right after the gospel meeting. And Wayne has told me, I guess, with the elders, decided to move up the August monthly singing to the 31st. And then beginning the first Sunday of August and Sunday morning from there out, I will be doing Proverbs Sunday morning adult Bible class. And the men, Jim, I guess you got the first go around with the book and stuff that you guys on Wednesday nights. Each man will take a turn on a topic, cover it for 3 or 4 weeks, depending on the time. Thank you very much for your kind attention.